To this day, it still pains me that almost no studios are making giant big-budget sci-fi games with sprawling universes, or when they do, oftentimes they come out less than stellar. But despite the propensity of failure, there is one series that managed to capture the magic this genre is capable of, and is none other than Mass Effect, one of the best sci-fi universes in all of fiction, not just games. The original trilogy to this day is beloved by millions, and along with that comes a huge list of memorable quests and missions that cemented it as one of the greats. For a lot of people, their top pick would be something like the final mission from the second game, where you can lose or save your entire squad before going out into the third title. For some, it would be Priority to Chanka or the Citadel in Mass Effect 3, and how they both handled build-up and payoffs alike so perfectly, along with showing some of the fan-favorite locations in the whole series. For others, it would be one of the greatest villain reveals and mission structures in games history with Virmire from the first installment, which by the way I almost chose as well. But for me, I actually have a different mission that in my opinion is everything that Mass Effect should be, everything that makes it so amazing, and also the mission that made me fall in love with this series forever, all wrapped into one: Noveria. You see, partway through the first game, you were given Spectre status on a massive space station called the Citadel, making you a special agent of sorts for the strongest governing body in the entire galaxy, the Council, and following this, your commanding officer Anderson steps down and gives you full power over the SSV Normandy, a prototype deep scout frigate with new highly classified stealth tech. Anderson and your new allies inform you of 3 urgent missions you will need to tackle in order to figure out what's going on with a mysterious artifact you found at the beginning of the game, along with finding out what happened to another Spectre, Saren, who's gone rogue. One of these 3 missions is Noveria, a massive icy planet that is private council territory, home to top secret high-tech research going on into genetics, biology, human augmentation, and much more. When you first land on the planet, you are met by security and a lot of guns, but by proving your Spectre status, they let you inside and inform you that an Asari matriarch named Benezia, working with Saren, has made her way up through the mountains to a research facility called Peak 15. So in order to track her down, you need to make your way to the garage and acquire a vehicle. But in order to do that, you need to figure out how to get a pass to gain access. There are a ton of different ways to do this, all of which involve walking around this massive spaceport and learning about some of the research and craziness going on this planet. You can bribe a jellyfish alien with an attitude despite being monotone to buy a pass, figure out company trade secrets and extort, or work with an extremely corrupt official and advisor in the colony. But regardless of how you get the pass, this awesome opening to the mission is only the start of what is about to get a lot more crazy, and also provides some really cool lore and a look into the history of the universe and its peoples and the companies within it. And I really wish more games would provide a huge amount of setup for missions in games like this, where it feels like even the low stakes introductory portions provide so much value and make the later reveals that much more interesting because of the immersion and intrigue that it takes so long to build before. It makes it feel like a real and lived in universe with tons of things going on outside of your main hero's journey. Nonetheless though, after you're able to finally get into the garage, you're attacked by a team of Geth, which are sentient artificial intelligence warriors feared all throughout the galaxy, proving that they must be working for Benezia, meaning you need to get to the vehicle and get to that research facility quickly to figure out what's going on. For the next couple of minutes, you'll find yourself battling armies of Geths and turrets as you speed your way to Peak 15 through a giant mountain range. And when you finally arrive, you're forced to go back on foot to get inside, now finding yourself in my single favorite part of the entire Mass Effect franchise, maybe only tied with talking to Sovereign for the first time. And that's because when you step into Peak 15, it becomes immediately apparent that something is very, very wrong. Geth litter the entrance, but after you dispatch of them, you start to notice some weird oddities, like turrets facing the wrong way from what you would expect, abandoned mess halls and rooms that indicate people left in a hurry, along with logs that imply something very sinister has happened, not just a Geth attack. At one point, you can hear the station's virtual intelligence over the loudspeakers telling you that the facility needs to be repaired in order to return to order. And if you're going to get some answers, that will be the first thing to do. Right around this time though, suddenly an army of giant space bugs with massive tentacles burst out of the vents and begin attacking you, turning the sequence into a horror game of sorts. And so it seems we have our answer for what happened on the station. And now you have to fight your way through hordes of these weird alien creatures along with Geth to restore power to the core and find more answers. After doing so, you unlock more parts of the station along with dialogue with the core intelligence system, which leads you to finding a group of surviving researchers on the station barricading themselves in a small portion of the living quarters. You learn that these creepy aliens attacking you and stalking you from before are none other than the Rachni, an ancient fabled race of highly aggressive bug-like creatures that almost wiped out the universe many years ago, but were defeated by Krogan and their ferocious warrior culture. In fact, the whole reason for the Krogan genocide in the first place was the fact that their numbers grew so high in order to defend against the Rachni invasions, and after the victory, they needed to be dealt with lest a new strong adversary go up against the Council in Citadel space. And I can't express just how fascinating learning about all of this lore for the first time was, and it really goes to show that sometimes the best thing a quest can do is give us a sense that the world and universe we're playing in have so much more depth to it beyond just ourselves. And being able to talk with all of your companions and make choices here with all of the survivors is peak sci-fi role-playing to me, along with a foreboding ancient Cthulian-like enemy, which I really find so fascinating. The mission isn't quite over just yet though, as in order to help the survivors you need to track down Benezia and fight her in one of the hardest battles in the entire series, after which you will find the Rachni Queen herself, likely the last hope of the Rachni species survival, trapped in a containment facility. And it's here you have to either spare or kill the Queen after she telepathically talks to you through a dead body and professes that the Rachni are actually peaceful but were being controlled. And the decision you make here can have drastic effects not only in this game, but surprisingly, mostly in the third installment, where your decision here will completely change what happens at a certain part of the story. Regardless of that decision though, the final part of this quest is fighting the remaining mind-controlled Rachni and escaping from this cursed planet, after which you will make your way to your ship and take a much-deserved breather. Overall, this is just the exact kind of quest, for me at least, that shows why Mass Effect is such a beloved series. It has everything from an awesome and unique location, tons and tons of world building and lore, unique and interesting art design with distinct areas you don't see anywhere else, and an engaging villain with ties to your companions I didn't even mention here, along with choice and consequence and different ways to tackle all parts of the mission that is so long and extended. And for me, it was after completing Noveria on my original playthrough over a decade ago now that I truly understood I was playing something I would never forget, and even to this day still stands as one of the best quests I've ever played in a game. Because despite the jankiness of gameplay and design in the first Mass Effect nowadays, the ideas on offer here are unmatched even to this day, and more than anything, it's a shining example of why sci-fi in games can be so great. The Mass Effect franchise is practically defined by its unforgettable and legendary characters. Greats like Garrus, Tali, Mordin, Rex, and Commander Shepard himself are all immensely deep and interesting people to dive into and get to know, all with their own sets of political beliefs, ideas, and wants and goals. But for me, I've actually always liked one thing about Mass Effect more than any of the characters, and that's the world building. It's the whole reason I like the first game in the series so much more than, say, the second installment, my least favorite in the trilogy, and while that's an unpopular opinion to have, I'll defend it to the grave. And under this context, there's actually one specific character in the series that rises above everyone else. One that most people might not think of immediately, but one that for me quite literally defines what it is that made me fall in love with this series in the first place. A villain that played host to the greatest moment in the entire multi-game spanning story, and a presence so omnipotent, so powerful, and so unknown that few things in fiction can even match it. For those of you that don't know, Sovereign is one of the main two bad guys in the original Mass Effect game, and in many ways is the catalyst for all of the events that happen afterwards. But the Mass Effect series didn't gain true mass market reach and appeal until the second game, so tons of people never actually even met Sovereign in this first installment, and only know some of what makes him great from mentions in games afterwards. The thing that makes Sovereign so compelling as a character though, is that unlike most villains, he truly feels unbeatable, and that's due to such patience and setup from the narrative. You see, you learn early on in Mass Effect 1 that the galaxy is at a threat from an all-powerful and ancient race of machine intelligences known as the Reapers. In fact, even at the start of the game, you see Sovereign taking off from a planet you are on, assuming it's an enormous enemy ship, when actually it's the enemy enemy itself. And as you piece together more and more of the narrative while playing through the game, you start to get hints at what you're up against, with visions of past races that have been killed by the Reapers in cycles millions of years before yours. And it's all of that buildup and mystique behind Sovereign and the Reapers before even meeting them that makes them so foreboding and formidable, along with really interesting. I'll never forget the first time I ever played Mass Effect being absolutely consumed by the Reapers and the idea of their doom and Armageddon. And despite how great the characters around me were, what I really wanted to know more about was the driving force of the main narrative, the big bad guys. And this desire to know more is finally answered near the end of the game during the mission on Virmire, where you first come into contact with the Reaper ship you saw at the start of the game, and the enemy that's been behind the scenes pulling the strings the entire way through finally reveals himself. And it's here you're met with quite literally the greatest single moment for a villain in game's history, in my opinion, where this ancient and all-knowing being of sorts speaks to you over hologram, filling the room you're in with a menacing red hue. And no matter what question you ask, no matter how much you prod, Sovereign always feels one step ahead of you and treats you not as his equal, but as nothing more than an ant being crushed by a shoe. Seriously, listen to some of this conversation here and tell me it's not awesome.
Your lives are measured in years and decades. You wither and die. We are eternal, the pinnacle of evolution and existence. Before us, you are nothing. Your extinction is inevitable. We are the end of everything.
And I can't express just how amazing and unexpected this reveal the first time playing Mass Effect is. So much so that it will send the stakes of the story to an entirely new level, and in my case, even gave me goosebumps as a kid. Going up against a character that is not only cunning and strong, but beyond our human comprehension. A Cthulhian-like entity that has goals and ambitions that reach beyond the pale that we can even understand. And following this moment, you then soon have to fly back to the Citadel, a massive space station at the center of all galactic commerce and life, and save it from literally one ship. One being, Sovereign, from destroying literally the entire galaxy on his own by activating a secret function in the station. It's such a powerful moment and reveal for a character that up to that point basically didn't play a role. And it's the exact things like this that makes me love Mass Effect so much, and the first game especially. Literally one Reaper, one character on his own almost wipes out the entire galaxy you know and love. And even after killing him, discovering that there are thousands more Reapers just like him flying towards you from deep space makes it so terrifying and the perfect ending. Really though, for me, what made Sovereign such an utterly captivating and compelling villain and character was that he truly embodied the perfect idea of an unbeatable foe. A presence and intelligence so above our own that even trying to understand it would require millions of years of evolution. And while the Reaper's motives and history is further fleshed out later in the series, especially in Mass Effect 3's DLCs, this character here in the first game really exemplifies what made the series so great in the first place before the Reapers just became another enemy that we fight like in every other game. A universe out there to discover, but also one that we can't ever fully understand, making us ask more questions than we'll ever get answers to. And sometimes that's what the best characters out there do. They make you appreciate the universe and world building even more, resulting in you falling in love with everything else a game has to offer too. And for me, no villain did that better than specifically Sovereign, a literal god machine that embodies the fear of the unknown itself. And at the end of the day, what's more compelling than that? When you think about great RPG or role-playing games with amazing lore, it's almost impossible not to stumble upon something from BioWare in the early 2000s. Series like Knights of the Old Republic, Jade Empire, Dragon Age, and in my opinion, by far the most captivating of them all, Mass Effect. And that's because for the first time in gaming history during the first game's release, it felt like we finally had a huge sci-fi epic that wasn't based on an already popular movie property like Star Wars. An entire universe out there for us to discover with alien species, locales, and stories to tell. However, the real thing that sets Mass Effect apart from its contemporaries isn't the memorable characters or sprawling futuristic locations. Rather, it's the utterly enthralling world building and lore. So much so that there's a literal voice codex with hundreds of entries paragraphs long, all narrated by a silky smooth voice, and people love it. I struggle to think of many other games I can literally do nothing more than just sit and listen to made up stories about the world for hours, but Mass Effect is so fascinating at its core that you simply can never feel like you have learned enough. Everything, down to what people eat and how biotics work from a scientific standpoint, can be carefully studied and understood, along with thousands of years of history including political strife, galactic conquest, and ancient alien artifacts. And speaking of ancient aliens, they're one of my personal favorite things about the setting. This isn't a near future like Starfield composed of mostly humans. In Mass Effect, the Milky Way has been conquered due to a mysterious network of relays that has been discovered by a handful of hyper-intelligent species, most recent of which when we play the games are humans themselves. These relays allow faster than light travel across gargantuan distances in our galaxy, and at the center of it all is what is called the Citadel, a massive space station that is the heart of galactic trade and politics, where a council of other alien species sits that act as important leaders with their hands in all sorts of events across space. And in each of the original trilogy games, we get to visit different parts of this station, all with their own architecture and ways of life. But the most interesting part of each of these encounters is just getting to walk around and really understand the universe more. You can talk with aliens all over and learn about their people, beliefs, and histories. You can read data terminals full of the biggest events in the timeline of the world, or simply bask in the glory of this hulking station full of so much life you've never seen before. And this sense of wonder only gets greater as you explore more and more of the universe. You can fly between multiple solar systems full of stars and planets, and for each of them, you can once again look into the history of every planet and the people that live there, or scan them for materials to look for upgrades. The best planets, though, are those we actually get to land on and run missions. Places like Noveria, Vermeer, Palaven, Mars, Ilium, Thessia, or even Earth's very own moon. And each of these many worlds is home to either massive cities we get to explore outside the Citadel, or missions full of lore and world building that is top-notch. For example, in the first game, you get to visit a haunted planet called Pharos, with buildings that reach high into the sky well above the clouds that have been abandoned and left desolate after a mysterious creature called the Thorian has been discovered when a race of intelligent machines called the Geth attack. Innocent human beings are being turned into mindless husks, and amidst the chaos lies a creature millions of years old that has the power to mind control its hosts and have them do its bidding. On a completely different mission, on a snowy planet like Noveria, you stumble upon an ancient race of bugs called the Rachni that years ago almost spelled the end of the entire galaxy, but were defeated by the Krogan, who in their massive numbers threatened galactic peace, which prompted Solarian scientists and special operatives to create a genophage to make them all infertile. And it's a rich and engrossing history and intrigue like this that makes Mass Effect so special. It really does feel like a living, breathing universe with its own history and people to uncover. Not everything is in service to you as the player. The world is the main character, and because of that, it's so easy to get lost in just trying to understand it all. And it's also why Mass Effect is the only game series in history where I personally listened to and read everything, because the world building is just so outstanding that you literally can't help but want more, especially when all that lore plays a crucial role in the decisions we make. For instance, that genophage I mentioned can be cured in the third game depending on your decisions, or you can choose to let the Krogan species die because of how dangerous you've seen them be on their home planet of Tuchanka. Or even those small touches like deep dive explanations for how Mass Effect relays work, or how certain species survive on so little food, add so much to the overall experience because it all feels well thought out, well crafted, and real. And at the heart of it all is one of the greatest and most fascinating main stories in a game series of all time, where you slowly unravel that behind this beautiful galaxy is actually actually a cycle that has been taking place for millions of years, where an ancient machine race of massive ships called the Reapers are awakening from their slumber to rid the galaxy of all organic life over and over. You see, millions of years ago, an apex race called the Leviathans noticed that all of their predecessors had died after they created true artificial intelligence and synthetics, which eventually wiped them out. So the Leviathans created a machine called the Catalyst, meant to bridge the difference between organic life forms and robotic creatures. But with its infinite resources and ability to calculate future probabilities, the Catalyst concluded that organics and synthetics were always meant to be in conflict, and that left to their own devices, organics would overuse all resources in the Milky Way and cause its collapse entirely. So the Reapers were created to purge all organic life every 50,000 years, right as alien civilizations are starting to get hyper advanced. And after killing all intelligent life in the galaxy, the Reapers would leave the more primitive creatures to their own devices to go through the natural stages of evolution to become spacefaring races once again that eventually discover the Mass Effect relays, which lead to the Citadel and a scientific revolution. And I can't express just how amazing lore like this is. I'll never forget playing through the original trilogy for the first time as a kid growing up, and to this day there's not been anything else in sci-fi games, movies, or even books alike that captured me in quite the way that the original Mass Effect trilogy did, where quite literally everything in the game is so interesting. The cultures, the aliens, the main plot, the science and technology, the people you meet, and most of all, the world that takes you by its grasp and never lets go. Mass Effect is so special because it's a series that at its core finds meaning in deep and introspective lore. The kind that will have you sitting on your couch for hours doing nothing more than simply listening and reading to anything you can find. And on top of that, there are tons of different places to visit and explore that give life to the things you have read and listened to, and only add to what is without a doubt one of the most interesting sci-fi settings the gaming medium has ever seen, and one of my personal favorite settings in fiction, period. The Mass Effect series is without question one of the most fascinating and engrossing worlds ever created for a video game. And a big part of that is all of the unsolved mysteries and questions that the universe left for us to discover that to this day are still being talked about. But in my opinion, the greatest of all of these might also be one of the smallest, that a large portion of the player base doesn't even know about. You see, in every Mass Effect game, a crucial part of the gameplay loop is heading back to your ship, the Normandy, after every mission and opening up the galaxy map to see where you want to go next. And during this downtime, you also are given the opportunity to explore the galaxy a little bit, to check out planets off the beaten path. In the second game, for example, this means deploying probes to gather resources. In the third, it's capturing weapons and infantry units to join you in your fight against the Reapers, and in the first game, sometimes it even includes touching down on barren planets themselves to drive around and explore. But regardless of the specific title, one of the best parts of these sections is also getting to just read the descriptions of each and every planet you come across and soak up the world building and lore that this series is so well known for. However, while many of these planets simply have descriptions of the atmosphere and history, some are hiding a lot more. And out of all of these, maybe none are more mysterious and terrifying than Logan. Found in the first Mass Effect, in my opinion the best Mass Effect game ever made, Logan is an unassuming gas giant located in the Theseus system of the Attican Beta cluster of the Milky Way. It has no standout features, no main or side missions, and is one of the shortest planet descriptions in the entire game. But even with the few words we do get to hear about this strange place, you can't help but instantly feel captivated. The planet description in-game reads as follows. Logan is a standard hydrogen-helium gas giant. The survey team who charted the system 20 years ago reported many strange disturbances in Logan's clouds, suggesting that many remarkably large solid objects were present beneath the cloud tops. As the ship approached, however, they subsided one by one. These disturbances have never been reported again. So what exactly were these mysterious large objects beneath the clouds on Logan then? And even more interestingly, why have we never heard from them ever since? Some in the community think that they could have been massive helium-3 mining rigs that are being used by covert illicit mining operators of Volus Imperialis. But if that were the case, you would think that someone would have picked up on it by now. And also, it would be strange that these operations would never pick up again, assuming the scale that they must have been on to be picked up by ship scanners. And this This is where things get interesting. What if the readings that came up on that ship's scanner were actually Leviathans? For those of you that don't know, Leviathans were revealed in the third game to be the original organic race that developed the hyper-intelligent machine species known as the Reapers, whose prime directive was to protect life, and in doing so, they decided that every 50,000 years, all sufficiently intelligent organic life would need to be purged in order to keep the galaxy afloat indefinitely and preserve organic thought. This is because the Reapers determined that the organisms otherwise would always lead themselves to their own doom through creation of things like hostile artificial intelligence. So over millions of years, this cycle has continued on, with the Reapers every 50,000 years killing most of the life in the Milky Way and allowing the primitive species to survive in order to once again eventually discover the massive Citadel space station that will propel their technology forward while secretly allowing the Reapers to watch them. So what if those ship scanner readings on Logan were actually some hidden Leviathans themselves? After all, we know from the Leviathan DLC in the third game that some others are hidden in the galaxy that have still yet to be found. And potentially even more cool, what if those readings are actually an undiscovered race from a previous cycle that is secretly pulling the strings of the main campaign behind the scenes and slowly leading the Reapers to their doom? Maybe the mystery of the Thorian and its power of mind control and where it comes from can be solved on Logan. Maybe the virtual aliens or the idea of a race that put their consciousness in massive supercomputers to sail through the stars is actually hiding here. But really, the ideas and things that Logan could be are endless, and as to what was really picked up on the scanners that day, we may never know. Truly, one of the coolest and most unassuming game mysteries out there, not only because it's fascinating in its own right, but because it would fit so perfectly into a future story in the franchise or could even tie into the next game's main plot perfectly. And more than anything, it's the best example of why I think Mass Effect 1 is the best in the series. There are just so many mysteries in that game like this one, that even in just one paragraph can make your imagination go wild with possibilities and make you want to dive into the universe and its lore more and more.